I'll be talking about some of the things that I believe somehow were showing up in this conference here and there. To be honest, this conference seems to be very focused on the network part of it, and I have an opinion. I've been working on this topic for a year, more than a year now, that actually the problem isn't even in the network. Or the network has a big problem, and to deal with all of this stuff, but actually it's not the place where immediate attention has to be put in order to start solving these problems. I've been talking about this also on the previous conferences, but to be honest, the second problem that I believe is that we are showing up here in the, thank you, yes. We are showing up here in the talking between ourselves, kind of, so people that have a networking origin, let's put it this way, and the message isn't really getting further. And I believe we should start changing that. But in order to do that, I would like to show you a certain model that I believe that is, at least from Detecon, or me personally also, some kind of an approach to try to think how to really do the transformation of a telco to start talking about automation seriously. So I don't bother yet. I will explain this a little bit at the end, actually. So this is just, it does exist. So what I will be talking about today is that the shaping of the new role of the enterprise architecture management and the software architecture evolution, because I believe that those are the topics that are somehow very important, kind of ignored. And I will be linking this to many of the things that are also showing up here, as well as in different speeches of different people. I'll start with some kind of a joke, let's put it this way. So we've got ETOM, right? And the industry has ETOM. It's a cool model. It actually is, it has been working for a very long time. So we know how to do automation based on ETOM, right? I chose the very simplified model because that's one that I can grasp my head around. So the more detailed ones are basically beyond my capability to comprehend. Maybe I'm just silly. The thing is, in the current frameworks model, there are 251 processes with the word service, 34 with the word test. But if you go later, the number of processes with the word continuous automated is 0. So what does that mean? Does that mean that, that they did something wrong? No, that just means that the most used framework of understanding how the telco industry works, or a telco company works, is simply not talking about the duration of the processes. And that actually is important because what we are trying to achieve is talking about fast processes, automated processes, and ETOM doesn't speak at all about that. So does that mean that we need to throw ETOM out? Well, no, that just means that that we're talking about a certain layer of abstraction that ETOM doesn't even care about. There are approaches, so the TM forum, so that TM forum will not kill me. There are approaches in the TM forum to talk about Zoom and other architectural concepts that start talking about the speed of things. But the question is, how many IT architects actually understand that? So how many IT architects know what Zoom is, and how many know what ETOM is? And I can expect that a lot know what ETOM is, not that many know what Zoom is. So that's one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning, that we are kind of talking in our own sauce here, but this has huge implications on the stuff outside. So I took a different model that I like a lot. It's a very simple model. I loved it when I was at school, I think. That's probably when I learned it for the first time. It's an awesome model, and actually it's still applicable. That's the cool thing about it. So what I will try to show here is that even today this model makes sense, and this is still a very good thing. So this is my variation on what the reality of the telco currently, the V model on currently. So I call it the Volkswagen model now because it's a VW-like. So this just shows that it's way too complex and based on our own on the involvement of different vendors and the speed, the production cycles durations. This can actually never sensibly work and to be considered agile. This way just doesn't work. So we need to start thinking about how to change that. There are, of course, methods to do that. We are talking about automation, different types of continuous integration, delivery, deployment, et cetera, et cetera. Still, this basic model has to change. So now I changed something. So I added agile V model of development and testing. So actually nothing has changed. The V model still works if it's an agile model of development and testing. The only difference actually is that this now is supposed to take 3 weeks instead of a year and a half. That really is the only difference. But what does that mean? Well, we need to add something to the model. So can anyone tell me what this actually would mean? So what could those arrows be? So I want to wake you up a little bit. So what kind of processes or additional concepts those things could be? Anybody has any ideas? Huh? No, so that's too far. That actually, DevOps would be the next one actually, if you really want. But this would be continuous integration. This would be continuous deployment, and this would be continuous testing, depending where. So here it would be DevOps. Actually, would also probably be more or less an arrow in this area. So continuous testing, I consider 2 different parts of continuous testing. So here, based on systems, so allowing the changes in, or allowing testing for a particular system, and then the most important test, which is the end-to-end test. And what I believe is also very important that we are constantly forgetting when talking about automation, and whenever I have a chance, I try to talk about that, is that in order to do proper automation, we need to start with requirements, and that in order to do automated tests, we need a description of requirements that allows automation, which means that there is no, it kind of works, it has to work exactly, or there is no automated test. So we need to remember also that, and this also has multiple implications on the processes that we are using. Still, this is just like a prelude to what I actually want to talk about today. So let's imagine that's a random telco. So my question to you is, like, put a guess. If this is, for example, I don't know, mobile, this is fixed, or actually you can divide it with any way you like. So how many Jenkinsons or GitLabs are present in each of, like, in the whole structure? Is it 1, 10, 15, 100? What's your guess? Yeah, okay, but so my guess is like at least 1 per different silo. Whether that's good or bad, so it's good because from their perspective, it's easy. They put it under the desk, they run it, they can start talking about continuous integration, they're faster. Awesome. But then we have the next question, which is, okay, how many of those Jenkinses actually have continuous access to an end-to-end environment? Because this is the only moment, the only way we can get end-to-end tests working. And the answer to that is none. At least based on what I saw in the organization that I have worked with, none of the Jenkinses that I have seen actually cooperates with an end-to-end environment, which in the end means that you cannot do an end-to-end test. You cannot automate a service test, which in the end means you're never actually understanding what is the implication of changes on the customer. And that should probably be the most important thing that we need to learn, right? At least that's an assumption I'm making. Then the next question is, how many of those Jenkinses can be called reliable, easily reachable, and then security compliant? And the next question is, yeah, maybe 1, maybe 2, and then they are hidden somewhere. Somebody maybe did some work, but they still don't know. So these guys don't know about the Jenkins that actually does that. So what am I trying to tell here? I'm trying to tell here that the organization itself is a problem. And we are kind of pretending that we are saying, yeah, it is a problem, but we are not really doing anything about it. And if we want to talk about, sensibly talking about automation of all of this stuff, the organization is one of the fundamental things to start changing. But it's not that easy. Why? And that's the second part. So software architecture in telcos. So I like the silo from a monolith kind of thingy. So we've got the IT monolith and we've got the telco monolith. So that's easy, right? I mean, we can manage that. We can somehow change it. It's not difficult. That we should be able to deal with that. But then, so we've got different like chain parts cooperating with different things. This is the complexity level that we can manage. The stuff starts being crazy when we go look at that. Because if you've got a portfolio of different services, the monoliths are still there, although they are not identical. So some stuff is covered with the same thing, some stuff is covered with this little different things. So we end up with like this, it's not fully monolith, but monolithic kind of a thingy that we end up building. And the relationships between them, the number of relationships between those things is absolutely crazy. That is the reason why a typical telco takes a year and a half to do changes in their IT. That's because the number of relationships that they need to take care of and understand is way too big to really deal with that sensibly and quickly. So based on that, and for the discussion about Jenkinses, I have a second question. So how many of those units, so people like here, I don't know, so EPC, IMS, I don't know, routing, transport, whatever. How many of them have a single production model agreed, so to allow sensible end-to-end service testing? What I mean by that, so a production model for me would be, yeah, we're using continuous integration, and there are multiple steps, for example, of testing environments that it goes through the continuous integration, delivery, deployment process, and continuous testing. And after that, we can start talking about putting stuff into production automatically. By the way, how many of you believe that continuous integration, delivery, deployment, and testing is the way to go? So that this is the thing that we should be going for in the telco industry? Or are there any better automation concepts? Like raise your hand, maybe. Oh, a lot. Okay. Okay. So I would have a question to all of you. So what are the alternatives? So like how can we automate without a really like encompassing model for the whole service to be built? Because if we don't, we have like random automation, or maybe there's a bit different model and I didn't read the book or I didn't read the memo, but I would really like to then if you can enlighten me. But anyway, so they typically don't. And what does that mean? If they don't have this thing agreed, then that is actually a problem. What I mean by that, so all of this continuous integration, delivery, testing capability that the company would build to allow actually testing and implementation in production finally. So the testing plus production implementation, that should be considered basically new shared OSS. That's a lot of additional capability that should be somehow similar, mostly similar, across at least a service, because that's the only way we can figure out, okay, the changes that we're doing to this particular service didn't break that service. At least that's my understanding of the goal that we are trying to get to. And the thing is, so somebody probably should be talking about building that. Well, awesome. So who will do that? I mean, we've got a problem, so we need to solve it. So how are we going to go for that? So who will pay for it and then enable the creation of automated end-to-end environments, for example? So like random telco project priority list, I mean, there's a 5G killer app, then there's Volta new codec, whatever. So this is just a random bunch of projects that probably are somewhere at the top of telcos, let's say, priority lists. The thing is, so we've got these projects. They are busy dealing with the stuff that they need to do. So delivered, well, 5G killer app, right? Nowhere in the charters it was written that they need to deal with building up automation, because the second problem is, for example, the service that they're trying to modify has 33 different systems in IT and then 13 systems in telco. So what would be the budget of a project? So for example, 5G killer app project, so they need to do their changes, plus they need to enable automation on 34 different systems and 13 different telco systems. So I don't know what it would be, but basically for sure not something that people would be willing to spend. That's the message. So the project will not do that. That's for sure. And the second part is, well, the organization that is now creating the test environments, typically, I mean, at least in the companies I've been working with, has been optimized. And down to the point in which they do nothing but ops. So they more or less have their stuff somehow put into different racks. They just connect the cables, and that's more or less the amount of stuff that they can do. But that leaves kind of nobody to deal with the problem that we need to build an additional OSS layer that has to go very deeply and has to be available to multiple projects, and it has to be natural. There has to be a very strong integration between the providers of these tools, the availability of different capabilities based on those tools, and those projects or those products. Hopefully we go to the product concept. So at least when I'm looking at the problem, I don't see anybody that actually is able to solve the problem. That literally means that the organization is unable to deal with it. So is that good? Is it bad? So can we do something about it? Well, to be honest, I don't believe we can immediately. In the sense that no project will take the risk. The organizations, like the smaller organizations, are not ready to do so. And even if you actually wanted to build like a kind of a super automated test facility, the investment into it would be, I don't know, billions probably. The amount of time to build it up would be huge, because the idea would be you probably want to do it for every single project. And the reality is you can't do that. That just doesn't make any sense from multiple different angles. Probably we should choose one particular topic, one particular project to say, okay, this is the important area. We want to differentiate there. We want to enable them to do automation. That requires a little bit of a different thinking and basically priority setting across the organization. And that's something telcos have been terrible at basically from the start. If I asked, like, what is the priority of across the organization, typically there's 17 different answers. And this is the message that I actually wanted to give. The processes and the organization need to be adjusted to the changing software architecture, and the software architecture is actually the thing that starts. So it's not possible to do the DevOpses or no-opses that, I mean, everybody's talking about at the moment. So no, you're not going to be doing DevOpses or no-opses if the architecture of the software that we have both in IT and telco is looking what it looks, I mean, that it looks the way it looks like. It's just impossible. So we need to start talking about architecture, start disintegrating it, so sending the rocket missiles and then rebuilding it, and not vice versa. It doesn't make sense to build up a DevOps team to deal with this size of a problem. That's just not gonna do any good. So as a summary, automation across services is not going to happen simply with traditional software architecture and organizational setup. So people are talking in this place a lot about automation. Oops, I'm over time. Talking a lot. So people are talking a lot about automation. The automation in the different parts is possible. Yes, you can manage to do that, but the customer doesn't care. The customer only will see the difference, and the automation is done at the service and the end-to-end level. And at the moment, there's nobody to do it. We don't have the people to do it, and simply the organization and the architectures are not allowing us to do so. So unless we start exploding something, not much will change. And that's exactly what kind of brings me back here. This is the first iteration of a concept of transformation that we in Detecon are working on right now. So what are the key areas to work? So first, where to start? For example, one of the questions that popped up today, target cost of revenue optimization. If you do it for revenue, if you do it for cost, you're dead. Second, how do you do it continuously improve and scale? This is critical. It cannot be a design once and launch and then everything's fine. That's not going to work. And then finally, there's huge amount of changes to the enterprise architecture management, that starting with what the architects are going to be doing and also into how they're going to be doing this. Yep. That's it. Thank you very much.